Hi, I'm Clark Quinn of Quinnovation. Recently, someone asked about an organizational learning maturity model, and coincidentally, I had one. However, it was locked away in my book from 2018. So I want to present that model and hope it's of use. In my book, Revolutionize Learning Development, I pushed for the performance ecosystem, going beyond the cores to talk about all the ways that L&D could assist organizational learning. I posit that optimal execution is only the cost of entry, and the only sustainable differentiator is continual innovation. And I argued for what that meant. I wanted organizations to have a concrete picture of what this looked like. In the book, I had a set of 6 categories, each with 2 components. And I looked at creating a maturity model. The intent is to provide a tool whereby organizations can understand what the possibilities are, assess themselves, and prioritize directions to move and improve. And let's be clear, this is conceptual, not empirical. This is a proposal about what should be the elements, and an effort to consider what fits in each stage of each component. The first area is culture, how we're learning and what our orientation is. And you'll see as we fill out the table what this means. Starting with learning, we transition from a competitive environment, which is unhealthy, through being willing to cooperate, say for team projects, to where we're collaborating of our own initiative, ending up where we're working to also improve our processes as well as our outcomes. And our orientation shifts from learning for our own benefit to learning as an organization, then to where we consider the impacts on society as well, ending up where we're looking to ensure this works across all those elements. Then we look at the formal learning elements, where we start. It's about how we design and who's using the learning. We start with a traditional knowledge dump, and then we move on to making it more engaging and lean. Then to where we're focusing on making it meaningful to the org and the individual. And finally, creating transformative experiences. We're also looking at who's using the learning. It starts with taking orders for courses, through having some times where the effort is to truly address a need, to where efforts are regularly aligned with key organizational needs, and finally where we're ending being discerning about the methods, measures, and outcomes. We then consider going beyond the course, to times when knowledge can be in the world, not in the head. We worry about resources and the ways people can get access to them. Instead of idiosyncratic aids, we move to have L&D creating support, and then recognizing the value of curation. And finally, with a mixed initiative with everyone contributing. And we move from siloed access to these resources through an intermediate stage of some focused development to a user-centric access based upon the user's needs, not the originator's location, ending at a dynamic matching of need to resource. We also start looking at informal learning, the continual innovation part. This includes both the status of networks and the usage of those networks. It starts where, if there's network usage, it's not org-originated, through to some units having a system, to then having an organizational focus on communication, and then actively facilitating social learning. We move from the Miranda organization, where anything you say can and will be used against you, to where some folks are willing to experiment, and on to where people are comfortable contributing. And finally, where folks recognize that active engagement is key to organizational thrival. We also consider the use of metrics in the organization, both to evaluate and to improve. We should move from not just looking at the cost of a butt in a seat for an hour, to whether that time is benefiting the org. Then we can incorporate informal learning, and finally, where measurement's naturally part of our practices. We move our focus from internal to a broader picture, and start evaluating our processes themselves. Move to looking at these as a synergistic whole. Finally, we look at our infrastructure, our underlying approach, and our systematicity. We move from handcrafted solutions to systemic approaches. Then we look to incorporating semantics, and finally look at systems with emergent capabilities. We move to look at our approaches as platforms, and then integrate those platforms, and finally allow those systems to adapt as conditions change. This is an updated version of the model in the book, and I think provides a useful framework for thinking about L&D. I hope this made sense and is of interest, and I welcome feedback. Thanks for listening. You can find out more at Quinnovation.com and revolutionizeld.com.